Hello and welcome. Today's lesson is on key features of quadratics. This is what we call the quadratic function. It has the form of a parabola. A parabola could be like a smiley face, like the one we have here, or it could be upside down like a frown. So notice that that's what the quadratic looks like. Now, here's some of the features that you're going to find on a quadratic. You're going to find the Y-intercept, where the graph touches the y-axis. So right here is the y-intercept. And also you have what is called zeros, solutions, roots. They all mean the same thing, x-intercepts. Okay, so here we have two x-intercepts at 3 and at -1. Also, the bottom part or the top part of a quadratic is called the vertex. And if it's a smiley face, you're going to have a minimum, which is the lowest point right there. Or if you have a frown or the graph is upside down, you're going to have a maximum, which is the highest point. So notice that the vertex could be a minimum or a maximum. And then you have what is called the line of symmetry, which is it's like an invisible line that goes right in the middle of the graph, right through the vertex. And basically this line of symmetry basically means is like, if you notice, this side here is a reflection of this side. Okay, so the line of symmetry is like a mirror. Here's the mirror, here's one side, and here's the reflection. Also, you can notice right here, for example, here I have a point and has a distance of 1, 2. And on the other side, I have another point, 1, 2. Okay, so basically you see the reflection happening all the way up and down. So there you go. Those are the key features of a quadratic. Now, the problems today, we're going to identify the key features of these graphs that we're going to look at. Let's say you have an exercise that asks for the vertex. So the vertex here would be at point -2, -1. So you would answer, what is the vertex? -2, -1. Is that going to be a maximum or a minimum? Well, it's going to be a minimum because it's the lowest point. So like right there is my minimum. The axis of symmetry. If you notice, the axis symmetry is this invisible line. This invisible line would be at x equals -2. Also, the y-intercept will be this point right here, which you could say is 0, 3. And the x-intercepts would be this point right here and this point right here. So that point right there would be 3, 0 and -1, 0. Now, please notice that sometimes on multiple choices, when they ask for the y-intercept, you might not see something like this, 0, 3. You might just see the number 3. But most of the time, we write them as coordinates. Same thing apply for the x-intercept. Most of the time, we write them as a coordinates with an x and a y. But sometimes on a multiple choice test, sometimes they might get asked for the x-intercept, and they might just say 3 and -1. Or also they might ask for, instead of x-intercept, they might say zeros. What are the zeros of this function? Well, this would be 3, -1. Or the solutions, 3, -1. Or the roots, 3, -1. Or they could also come in this format, okay? So please notice that that could happen. All right, domain. If you remember, domain is the x value. And remember that we always start with this setup. And with the domain, we imagine a vertical line. So if I go from left to right, the first place I touch is the arrow. So if you remember, when we touch the arrow, we erase the inequality sign and we move the pencil across until we stop touching. We stop touching right there. So we click on the eraser and we delete both sides. When that happens, that you delete the front and the back, we delete everything and we write all real numbers. Okay, so the domain here will be all real numbers. For the range, we do the same thing. We start up with the setup and we try to use a pencil or a line, and we put the line in the horizontal position and we start from the bottom up. And the first place we touch is this point right here, which is -1. So we're going to write over here, -1 with the dash because it's a solid point. And we keep moving up until we stop touching. And the last place we stop touching is right there, which is the arrow. So we delete this sign. And please remember that we always want the answer, when it has only one number and a letter, that the letter be on the left. So let's go ahead and finalize this. And we're going to write y flip the equality sign -1. So that will be our range. All right, let's look another example. On this example, I'm not given a graph, but instead I'm giving an equation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Desmos calculator and I'm going to write the function that they gave me. So y equals -2x squared minus 16x minus 30. Let's make sure that we copy it correctly. We did. And if we notice that, we can look at the graph very closely. Please remember that if your graph doesn't look the same, make sure you click right here and you want to delete the minor grid lines and you want to put 1 and 1. And then when you draw a little bit closer, you'll be able to see the graph and the lines. All right, very good. So right there, I can take a closer look at this graph. Here we go. And I can see that I have a vertex. And if you want, when you click right here, notice that area shows you the key features right there. So let's take a look here. So for the vertex, I'm going to have this point right here, which is -4, 2. It's right there, -4, 2. And for this one, we have a maximum. So that's right there, maximum. And for the next one, the axis symmetry. The axis symmetry will be this line right here. So that goes right there. It will be x equals -4. For the y-intercept, we're going to have to move the graph a little bit down. So just basically just click on it and move down until you can see where the line touches right there. If you remember, if you click right here, it will show you there, 0, -30. Perfect. 0, -30. And then for the x-intercept, let's go back up. And right there, click, and you can see -5, 0, and -3, 0. So -5, 0, and -3, 0. There we go. And then let's do the domain. Now, please understand that on the calculator, they don't put the arrows, but basically, you know that this line is going to go forever here and here. So basically, you know that your graph is going to be something like this, with an arrow here, an arrow here. So when you move the pencil across, you're going to touch right here. So if I have my setup right there, I'm going to touch the arrow first. And I'm going to erase this one. And then if I move the arrow to the other side, it's going to touch the other arrow. So if I move the line to the other side, it's going to touch the other arrow. So I erase here. And then I erase the whole thing, and my domain will be all real numbers. With the same idea, if I do my range, I'm going to draw a horizontal line like this. And then I'm going to move up from bottom up. And the first place I touch is the arrow, so that if I draw my setup here, first thing I'm going to do is erase the first one, because the first inequality sign, because that's the first thing I touch. And then the last place I touch will be right here at the very top. So let's look at our graph right here. This would be the very top, which is, this would be at 2. And so go right here and click this 2. And also it will be with the dash, because this is a solid point right there. So this would be our answer. In this case, we don't have to flip because the letters are already on the left. Okay, very good. So now we're going to try example number 3. Example number 3, we already have the graph for us. So right there, we're going to find the vertex, which is 2, -1. Now we're going to decide if it's a maximum or minimum. So we notice that it's a maximum. The axis of symmetry is going to be right here, which should be x equals 2. The y-intercept. The y-intercept will be this point right here, which should be 0, -3. And the x-intercept, if you notice right here, we don't have x-intercept. So none or not applicable. So there's no x-intercept. For the domain, remember we start right here and we touch the arrow. So that means my inequality sign is going to erase. And when I move this line over here, it's going to touch this here. So I'm going to erase over here too. So I erase everything. And my domain is all real numbers. And for the range, I am going to draw a horizontal line like that. And I'm going to move from bottom up. And if I move from bottom up, first place I touch is the arrow. So on my original setup, which always my original setup should be Y with the 2 inequality symbols. So when I touch that arrow there, then I would delete. And then when I continue moving up, last place I touch is right there, which is -1. So I put there -1, and I put a dash because it's a solid point right there. So there you go. That is my answer. Okay, let's go on to the next problem. On the next problem, I have a new function. So let's go ahead and change this function here. So it'd be y equals, open parenthesis, x minus 4, close parenthesis, square. And we click right there, and we can see that the graph is right here on the side. So we can see that the vertex is at 4, 0. So let's write right there, 4, 0. We see that the axis symmetry is right there at x equals 4. For the y-intercept, let's go ahead and move the graph up. And then we can click here, and we can see that the y-intercept is at 0, 16. And the x-intercept, so let's go back here, and we see that this graph only has one x-intercept, which is 4, 0. So please notice that you can have one x-intercept, two x-intercepts, or none. For domain, we notice again that the graph is going to be like this. So it's going to be all real numbers. And the range, I'm going to start from the bottom up, and the first place I touch is going to be right here, which will be at 0 and with the dash. And then if I move that line up, the last place I touch is going to be the arrow, so I'm going to erase. And on this case, I'm going to have to flip because I want the letter on the left, so it'd be y greater or equal to 0. So that's going to be our final answer. And there we go. So this concludes our example. I hope this video is helpful in showing you the key features of quadratics. Thank you very much for your time and have a great day. Bye-bye.